Well, hello, everyone. Let's see if this stream, we're still going to call this a test stream, goes a little better than my first live stream or my first few live streams from my desk. The class of 2026 is here. The National Film Registry, part of the Library of Congress in the United States, has announced the 2026 class of films to be preserved, protected, enshrined in the National Film Registry. Now, it's really the class of 2025. Technically, the names get released in 2026, but it's for the class of films voted on and selected in 2025 as worthy of preservation because of their cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance. I knew I was going to say that one wrong. Let me try again. Their cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance. Welcome to my channel. This is the Primary Sources channel, a channel dedicated to sources of information for your historic and family history research, as well as researching and sharing best practices, tips, and tricks for all things related to research. It's never been more important to focus on the facts and the sources of the best information. And that's what this channel is all about. So thank you for joining. Thank you for joining the chat. For those in the live chat, please let me know if you can hear me, if the audio is okay. I'll take that as a good to go. Excellent. Let's get started because we have a large number of films to get through. 25. What we're going to do today is dive into all of the wonderful sources of information and inspiration that we can find through film. You know, often I talk about on this channel and on my other channel, sources of information for telling a rich story about our ancestors. Sometimes we fixate on dates and places and all those vital bits of data, and those are important. But if we want to tell a fuller, deeper story to really get to know our ancestors, we need to look at daily life and all the aspects of daily life. That includes occupations, hobbies, art, geography, weather, world events, and even entertainment. What did our ancestors read? What music did they listen to? Or what did they watch on the big screen? And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is where film preservation enters our arsenal of resources. A word of caution, though. Google and AI make mistakes. They make huge mistakes. Go directly to the source. Now more than ever, it's really, really important to find the primary sources of information. I Googled, taking a shortcut to quickly look at the number of films that were added to the registry, and there were the names of films on that list that were not included this year. Google will list The Princess Bride as part of this year's list, and I think it's because of the recency of the death of Rob Reiner that it's popping up on that list. The Princess Bride is not included on this list, but we'll go through the names on this list. Let's get started right now. Now let's see if I can advance these slides. Yes, I can. Excellent. Excellent. This is the website. This is where we go for not just this year's selectees, but all of the inductees in the National Register of Film. www.loc.gov/film. From this website, You'll not only find the names and descriptions of the films included, you'll find out all about resources that you can use to do more in-depth research about these films and about film preservation and why it's important to history, looking at history from all angles, looking at your family history from all angles requires that we take a look at entertainment. And this is a great place to go. And you'll see here on the current website as of today, which is March 4th, 2026, the picture of what a great film, what a fantastic film, the Grand Budapest Hotel. And Film Club, we just reviewed it. Film Club is a wonderful, amazing show that I'm a part of, hosted on Stasis Geeks channel. The Wheel of Film blesses us with a random film every week. We take a really in-depth look at it. Our shows always last longer than the film itself, and we have a lot of fun. Everyone is invited to Film Club, but we did get the opportunity to review the Grand Budapest Hotel not too long ago. But check out the Library of Congress website for the National Film Registry and, oh my gosh, talking about family history research, this should be one of your go-to resources along with the National Archives for research in the United States. Let's dive in. The list this year includes films spanning over 100 years of film history. And we're starting with some of the earliest. The Tramp and the Dog, 1896. So in this presentation, I'm going to give you a little information about the film, but I'm going to read the write-up on the National Film Register website so that you can get an idea for the historic, cultural, and aesthetic significance of each film that was included in 2025. I hope to develop this this type of live stream more as a podcast. So I hope you can listen to this without seeing the presentation or the slide or the video, because I'm going to walk through it. The Tramp and the Dog was produced in 1896. This film is 1 minute and 22 seconds long. And you can see, well, if you're not listening as a podcast, if you are looking at the stream, you see a very, very grainy, old snip of the film. And it's hard to see, but in the foreground is a woman with a broom trying to swat a dog away from a tramp who climbed over her backyard fence, and or actually the broom is probably to swat away the tramp. The tramp climbed over her backyard fence and her dog is attacking the tramp. So let's read what we know about this film. The Tramp and the Dog is a silent film from Chicago's Selig Polyscope Company. Considered director William Selig's most popular early work. Filmed in Rogers Park, it is recognized as the first commercial film made in Chicago. Previously a lost film, it was rediscovered in 1921 at the National Library of Norway. The film depicts a tramp who attempts to steal a pie from a backyard windowsill, only to be met by a broom-wielding housewife and her dog who foils the crime. The film is one of the first known pants humor, where a character loses or almost loses his pants during an altercation. This scene inspired future comedy gags showing drifters and tramps losing their pants to dogs chasing them. I've included the link to the full film, the full 1 minute and 22-second film, available through Wikipedia. And you can just search on the Tramp and the Dog 1896. You'll get the link. This is obviously, it's outside of copyright protection. So feel free to enjoy this film. The next film, you'll notice that the quality of the picture has improved immensely in less than 20 years. The Oath and the Sword was produced in 1914. This is a 30-minute film that also included a trailer. The description is as follows: a three-reel silent drama, The Oath of the Sword, depicts the tragic story of two young lovers separated by an ocean. This earliest known Asian American film production featured Japanese actors playing Japanese characters and was produced in Los Angeles. I'm sorry, produced by the Los Angeles-based Japanese filming company. Made at a time when Hollywood studios were not yet the dominant storytellers of the American film industry, The Oath and the Sword highlights the significance of early independent film productions created by and for Asian American communities. Now, the link I've included here is to the National Film Preservation Foundation. If you go to that website, you'll find the full copy of The Oath of the Sword. It's pretty amazingly clear. The quality of the film preservation is excellent for this film. Now, of course, you can go and use any search engine and find a source for these films, but I'm going to try to highlight some different places where you can go to see some of these older films. This one also outside of copyright protection. So we can view it, we can show it, we can use it appropriately, but it's good to cite it appropriately as well. The Maid of McMillan was produced in 1916. This film is 14 minutes and 45 seconds long. And the description is as follows: known to be the first student film on record, this whimsical silent romance film was shot on campus in 1916 by students in the Thyrsis Dramatic Club at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. Club members Donald Stewart, class of 1917, and George D. Bartlett, class of 1920, wrote the screenplay. The original nitrate print of The Maid of McMillan was rediscovered in 1982, and two 16-millimeter prints were made. That's a great find. The original nitrate was likely destroyed at this time. So in making the new prints, the original was destroyed. That happened sometime. I can talk about some photos that I had to rescue from a really bad album that had deteriorated. In 1921, the funding from the National Film Preservation Foundation, I'm sorry, let me try that again. In 2021, with funding from the National Film Preservation Foundation, one of those 16-millimeter prints was scanned at 4K and reprinted onto 35-millimeter, helping to secure the film's survival and legacy. And the link that I include for this one is the link to the library at Washington University of St. Louis, who owns the film. That's where the film was made. Again, this is outside of copyright, 1916. The next film, and again, if you are watching and not listening to this as a podcast, you can see that the quality again has improved dramatically. The quality of this photo from the film. This is The Lady, produced in 1925. When The Lady debuted in theaters in 1925, the silent film era had hit its stride, and this movie represents a powerhouse of artists at their peak. Director Frank Borzaghi was a well-established expert in drawing out intense expressions of deep emotions and longing in his actors. He did just that with the film's lead actress, Norma Talmadge, also at the height of her career, both in front of and behind the camera. Talmadge produced The Lady, through her production company and commissioned one of the most prolific screenwriters, Frances Marion, to deliver a heartfelt story of a woman seeking to find the son she had to give up to protect him from his evil grandfather. The Lady was restored by the Library of Congress in 1922. Now, the link that I provided for this one is the link to Internet Archive, where you can find the full copy of The Lady, and you can check it out. This was produced in 1925, and it is outside of copyright, so it's available. Now, carrying on from The Lady, where you heard about Norma Talmadge's leadership in producing a film, not just starring in it. She had her own production company. We move on to the great Mary Pickford, an absolute pioneer for women in film. Not only did she star in movies, but she also had her own production company. Sparrows from 1926, 100 years ago. As a silent actress, producer, and key founder in the creation of the American film industry, Mary Pickford's performance in Sparrows represents her ability to master the genre she helped nourish. Sentimental melodramas full of adventure and thrills, with dashes of comedy and heartfelt endings. Pickford plays Molly, the eldest orphan held within the swampy squalor of the deep South, who moves heaven and earth to save other orphan children from a Dickensian world of forced labor. The film takes some departures from the visual styles found in Pickford's other films, invoking an unusual tone of despair while deploying camera angles and lighting akin to German expressionist cinema. Sparrows was preserved by the Library of Congress in collaboration with the Mary Pickford Company in 2020. And oh my gosh, I do realize, let's see, why? I hope you're seeing, if anyone, I do see there are a few folks in chat. Please let me know if you're seeing the slides advance. Because if you're not, then we have another one of those wonderful situations where the stream's not working. Oh, it seems to be working. Okay, I'm looking at my other, I'm looking at my my other computer here. I wasn't seeing the slides advance. Every one of these is an adventure, and I do appreciate your patience while I continue to learn how to do this. But let's get, this is the live stream, by the way. I will be producing an edited video with a little more information about each film. I'll dig a little more into the actors and why they are historically significant. But I need to write a script for that, or else that kind of video, if I continued on, that would be going on for hours. And you don't have that much time to listen to me prattle on about film. And let me just stop here and just, this is the 5th film out of 25. Why is this important to your research, to your historic research? Well, if you had an ancestor who was alive in the 1890s or 1920s or anywhere in between, these may have been films that they saw. Here's a great way to know what kind of films they may have seen or their friends or family members may have seen. Check out newspapers. Go to your local library or to newspapers.com or to Chronicling America. Those are all great resources to check out newspapers. Look for the cinema ads. They are in every newspaper. cities, large and small, that had a cinema definitely advertised in the newspapers. I'm looking now at newspapers from the 1920s and 30s from Baltimore, and I'm documenting week by week which films were showing at which theaters. And my ancestors lived between 4 or 5 major theaters in Baltimore. And so even if they didn't go to the theater one week, I can bet that at some point in time during those years, maybe 1 or 2 of the films that I'm looking at, maybe they saw those. Helps tell a more rich story. I also have letters that my grandfather wrote during World War II. And in those letters, he references the films that were shown aboard ship and asks my grandmother if she's seen those films yet either. And so there are conversations back and forth about those films. I want to know what those films were. Some of them I had never heard of. Some of the actors they talk about, I've never heard of before. So I wanted to do some research to tell their whole story. The link that I provided here for the Sparrows is the link from Wikipedia again. And there you can find the link to watch the film. The next film, 10 Nights in a Barroom. Again, look at the picture from the film. The clarity is improving with every year. This is another film from 1926, 100 years ago. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. 10 Nights in a Barroom, featuring an all-black cast. 10 Nights in a Barroom was produced in 1926 by the Colored Players Film Corporation of Philadelphia and is the earliest and only 2 surviving films made by the company. This silent film is based on the stage melodrama adapted from the 1954 novel 10 Nights in a Barroom and What I Saw There by Timothy Shea Arthur. Released in 2015 by Kino Lorber as part of the 5-disc set Pioneers of African American Cinema. The compilation was produced by the Library of Congress in association with British Film Institute, George Eastman Museum, Museum of Modern Art, National Archives, Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, Southern Methodist University, and the UCLA Film and Television Archive. Preserved by George Eastman Museum. Wow. So many organizations definitely recognized the value of this film. And a lot of effort was taken to restore and preserve it. And you can tell by the quality of the film. There is a link to the film at the Wikipedia site listed on this page. Check it out. And then we make a huge jump from 1926 to 1954 in this list. And we are in VistaVision land, color filmography. This is White Christmas. Now, and I should just read the description because it's going to probably repeat what I'm going to say. The song White Christmas, written by Irving Berlin and performed by Bing Crosby, was not first released in this film. It made its debut in the film Holiday Inn. Released during World War II, became immensely popular. It's in the context, the song itself is wonderful. When you listen to the song, it's wonderful. When you learn a little bit about the history and what was going on at the time that song was released, it definitely has an emotional punch and it means so much more. Again, another reason to learn about the history, learn about all of the art and culture and, music, entertainment is so important to our history. And in the case of the song White Christmas and the film White Christmas, there's definitely historic significance. It reads, while the chart-topping song White Christmas was first performed by Bing Crosby For the 1942 film Holiday Inn, its composer Irving Berlin was later inspired to center the song in the 1954 musical White Christmas. Crosby, along with Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, Vera Ellen Rowe, and director Mike Curtis, embedded White Christmas in American popular culture as a best-selling single and the top-grossing film of 1954, as well as regular holiday viewing throughout the decades. The story of two World War II veterans turned entertainers and a singing sister act preparing a show for a retired general, the film and its grand musical numbers were captured in VistaVision, a widescreen process developed by Paramount Pictures and first used for White Christmas. So film history here, definitely a landmark in film production and film creation, as well as the impact of the song. I have not seen this film restored. I don't think the versions I've seen have been on television, but a 4K Blu-ray disc was released in 2024. And so I think I'll add that to my list. We'll see if there's a steelbook. I don't know. We'll add that to my list of physical media that I'd like to acquire. Our next film, 1956, High Society. High Society starring Bing Crosby, Grace Kelly, and Frank Sinatra. Often referred to as the last great musical of the golden age of Hollywood, High Society features an all-star cast including Bing Crosby, Grace Kelly, Frank Sinatra, and Louis Armstrong and his band, along with a memorable score of Cole Porter classics. Set in Newport, Rhode Island, the film showcases the Newport Jazz Festival, established in 1954, and now features a remarkable version of Cole Porter's Now You Has Jazz. It includes the first big screen duet by Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby, singing Well Did You Ever? This was Grace Kelly's last movie before she retired from acting and married the Prince of Monaco. She wore her Cartier engagement ring while filming. These are those awesome golden age of Hollywood films. Now, this one also had a Blu-ray. Try that one more time. This one also had a Blu-ray release recently. That is hard to say. Blu-ray release recently in 2025, just last year. So this is another one to add to the physical media shopping list. Now, up until now, the first 8 films that we've looked at because they have historical, cultural, and aesthetic significance as a work of art, as a work of entertainment. And so we want to take a look at film as we're researching the lives of our ancestors to add that spice, that full story, that robust information that's going to allow us to tell a full story about our ancestors. When we talk about documentaries, however, they can do both. They can provide insight about the people who watched and were impacted by the films, but they themselves also serve to record history. So the National Film Registry also includes documentaries. This film is Brooklyn Bridge, and this is Ken Burns' first masterpiece. I'm a huge fan of Ken Burns. I think, like many historians my age, they were probably impacted greatly by the Civil War. Now, lot of conversation about the Civil War in the snooty scholarly circles, right? Was it too in depth? Was it too long? Was it too short? Did it only focus on a few primary sources? Are we tired of listening to Mary Chestnut's diary? Shelby Foote already gets enough airtime. Let's put all that aside. There had never been anything like the Civil War ever produced on television. Let's not be too snooty about it. All of those historians who had something churlish to say about it had never produced anything even close to that themselves. No, it would not be possible to exhaustively explore every facet of the American Civil War. That would take years to put on film, 4 to be exact. It's also not possible to dig every single primary source and use it. And what I admire about Ken Burns's work throughout the years is his absolute passion to capture the American experience. And that's what he started with Brooklyn Bridge. With book, try that again. With Brooklyn Bridge, Ken Burns introduced himself to the American public, telling the story of the New York landmark's construction. As with later subjects like the Civil War, jazz, and baseball, Burns connects the building of the Brooklyn Bridge to American identity, values, and aspirations. Released theatrically and nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature, Brooklyn Bridge marked the beginning of Burns' influential career in public media. More than just a filmmaker, Burns has become a trusted public historian. His storytelling presents facts, but maybe more importantly, invites reflection on what America is, where it's been, and where it's going. His influence is felt not only in classrooms and through public broadcasting, but across generations who see history as something alive and relevant. Amen. I could not agree more with that summary of the reason why Brooklyn Bridge belongs in the National Film Registry. Now, the link I included, or not a link, but the reference I included is your public broadcasting system station, PBS, Public Broadcasting Service. I'm sorry, it's called the Public Broadcasting Service, PBS. Your local PBS station will have either through its passport. I belong to Maryland Public Television. We have MPT passport. You'll be able to access the Ken Burns library, and it frequently runs in rotation on the public PBS stations. This write-up references the Civil War, jazz, and baseball. I think my second favorite, well, the Civil War is my favorite. My second favorite is the national parks, America's Best Idea. Baseball is fantastic. Country music, and I'm not a big fan of country music, but his documentary on country music is outstanding. And again, we're looking at this film not just to, to add to the stories of people who may have seen this film, but this film itself is history. It does record the history of the Brooklyn Bridge, and it is excellent. Another documentary, 2 in a row here, 1982, Say Amen, Somebody. George Nierenberg's documentary is a celebration of the historical significance and spiritual power of gospel music. With inspirational music, joyful songs, and brilliant singers, the movie focuses on the men and women who pioneered gospel music and strengthened its connections to African American community and religious life. Prior to production, Nierenberg, who is white, spent over a year in African American churches and communities, gaining the trust of the performers. Restored by the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in 2020, the film features archival footage, photographs, stirring performances, and reflections from the father of gospel, Thomas A. Dorsey, and its matron, Mother Willie Mae Ford Smith. This documentary is available on streaming services, so you can check it out. And again, as a documentary, similar to Ken Burns, looking to document the American experience, gospel music is one of those elements of our culture that is truly American, with roots going way back to a multitude of cultures, but like country music, gospel music is uniquely American, and gospel music also influenced country music. Now we get our first science fiction. The Thing, 1982. It was kind of a surprise when I saw this film on the list. Not my favorite. I'm not a big fan of The Thing. I understand why it's revolutionary, but not a big fan. And here's the write up: moody, stark, often funny, and always chilling. This science fiction horror classic follows Antarctic scientists who uncover a long dormant, malevolent extraterrestrial presence. The Thing revolutionized horror special effects and offers a brutally honest portrait of the results of paranoia and exhaustion when the unknown becomes inescapable. The Thing deftly adapts John W. Campbell's 1938 novella, Who Goes There, and influenced Stranger Things and Reservoir Dogs. It remains a tense, thrilling, and profoundly unsettling work of cinema. True, quite. A 4K ultra high def Blu ray disc was released in 2017. So you can check out the, I don't know if we call it remastered, but the high quality version of The Thing. The Big Chill, 1983. Lawrence Kasdan's Best Picture nominated The Big Chill offers an intimate portrait of friends reunited after the suicide of one of their own, and features actors who defined cinema in the 1980s: Glenn Close, William Hurt, JoBeth Williams, Kevin Kline, Jeff Goldblum, and Meg Tilly. This powerful ensemble portrays American stereotypes of the time: the yuppie, the drug dealer, the TV star, and deftly humanizes them. Through humor, tenderness, honesty, and an amazing soundtrack, it shows formerly idealistic Americans making and dealing with the constant compromises of adulthood while buoying one another with uncompromising love and friendship. And this is a film, as we move from documentaries that capture history, and we look at films that just tell us what was going on at the time and might actually capture the clothing, the fashion, the cars, the music of the day. The Big Chill is one of those. So it's a slice of life film. It's not a documentary. It's certainly a film that young adults at the time in 1983 may have seen, but they would have definitely heard the songs that were on this soundtrack. And they probably dressed the same way the folks did in the film. The cars were the same. The hairstyles were the same. So this is a film that, in addition to telling a story that's interesting, it captures that 80s look. And so it's another source, generally, of information about our ancestors, who are probably our own parents who lived at that time. Parents, maybe an older brother or sister who lived at that time. Now, as we move forward into the 80s, 90s, into today, we're not really looking at these films for historical relevance now, but future generations will be looking back to these films to understand how we lived. So my descendants will look at the next few films to know what I was watching. And I hope my descendants, all of them, check out this next film, The Karate Kid. This is a film I definitely saw in the theater. And it's a film that my friends and I talked about, quoted over and over and over again. We saw all of the sequels, and the Netflix series Cobra Kai did absolute justice to this property. The Karate Kid, 1984. An intimate story about family and friendship. The Karate Kid also succeeds as a hero's journey and a sports movie and a teen movie, a feel-good movie, but not without grit. The film offers clearly defined villains, romance, and seemingly unachievable goals, but also an elegant, character-driven drama that is relatable and touching. A father who has lost his son meets the displaced son of a single mother and teaches him about finding balance and avoiding the pitfalls of violence and revenge. Race and class are presented honestly and are dealt with reasonably. Our hero practices a lot, gets frustrated, gets hurt, but still succeeds. It's as American as they come, and it's a classic. That is absolutely the right write-up for this film. And I was so, so happy that Cobra Kai was faithful to this film, and it's, just faithful to the story. So many remakes and redos really don't get it. They just try to capitalize on popularity, try to capitalize on the intellectual property, and they don't care. They don't care about what the fans cared about. And Cobra Kai really did. And I also think Cobra Kai did a fantastic job of, turning the characters on their heads. Making who we thought was the villain a really good guy, and making who we thought was the good guy into kind of a jerk sometimes. That makes them real human. And I really do like it. If you can't tell, I really, really do like Cobra Kai. I hope my descendants, you know, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now, if they want to know what I was watching when I was a little kid, it was The Karate Kid. And I hope they watch this film so they can learn a little bit more about me and what I like in film. And back to back. This is also what I like in film. As an historian, this is my number one. This is number one on my list of films. This is Glory. While not a documentary, it is very, very strongly influenced by the real life events. The leadership of Robert Gould Shaw, the events of the around the battles that the 54th Regiment participated in, as well as all of their training to get to those battles. Again, it's not a documentary, but very faithful. And I think as a resource for Civil War historians, it's a really good watch. I live in Maryland, And if you follow my other channel and you see my live adventures, you'll see me in and around the battlefields in Maryland, predominantly South Mountain. I was just there last week. Antietam in Sharpsburg, Maryland. The opening scene of Glory. If you live in Maryland and if you know just a tiny bit about that history and about the Battle of Antietam, the opening scene in Glory hits you hard. It honestly gives me shivers when you see the tents and you see the soldiers doing their thing. Someone's writing a letter, someone's making coffee over a campfire, someone's playing baseball. And you know without knowing, you already have an idea of what this is. You have an idea that this is Antietam, and then you hear Shaw writing a letter to his mom. You actually hear him writing, and she's reading the letter. And he kind of says, I don't know, he says, please don't think that anyone's going to get hurt here, mother. And the camera pulls back and pulls back and pulls back. And then you just see, Antietam Creek, Maryland, September 1862. And it draws you in from the first, I think that's at 2 minutes and 50 seconds into the film. You're hooked. Your eyes are absolutely glued to the film. Those who created this film, the producers, the actors, took such great care, as best they could, with historic accuracy. Now, is it perfect? No. Are there big mistakes? Big ones. But it's okay. The fact that it focuses on a story that needed to be told, that opens up, just like Ken Burns' Civil War, that opens up more questions for further research, is absolutely what this kind of film is supposed to do. So let me read the description. Glory, 1989. Glory, described by Leonard Maltin as one of the finest historical dramas ever made, portrays a historical account of the 54th Regiment, a unit of African American soldiers who fought for the North in the Civil War. Authorized by the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, the regiment consisted of an all-black troop commanded by white officers. Matthew Broderick plays the young colonel who trains the troop, and Denzel Washington, in an Academy Award-winning performance, is among an impressive cast that includes Morgan Freeman, Cary Elwes, and Andre Braugher. American Civil War historian James M. McPherson said the film accomplishes a remarkable feat in sensitizing a lot of today's Black students to the role that their ancestors played in the Civil War in winning their own freedom. There is so much to Glory. I've watched it multiple times. Again, not a documentary, but if you have ancestors who fought in the Civil War or who lived in the United States during the Civil War, this is a good entry into further study about the war. What you'll get is a description of a few battles. You'll get to see the discipline used loosely in training soldiers. And then you'll get a culminating scene that it does capture the actual battle, except that there's a lot of scholarly criticism about the battle happening in the wrong direction. That the charge up the hill would have happened in the opposite direction. Just give a little grace on that. It's all okay. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. The actual site of this battle was among kind of some what do you call it? Low-lying beaches at Morris Island in South Carolina. It's actually been washed away. So the actual place that was portrayed has 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 been lost to the sea, as the American Battlefield Trust says on its website. However, you can visit Charleston, South Carolina, go to the harbor there. There are plenty of historical markers there, and you can see the former Fort Wagner battlefield site. And there you'll get information and a good sense of bearing as to where the battle occurred. So, film can also, in addition to giving us information or historically documenting or giving us a slice of life, like The Big Chill, or giving us, um, you know, context around how our ancestors were entertained, they can also direct us to the real places where history occurred. And Glory should certainly do that. I highly recommend anyone and everyone visit Antietam. It is one of the most magnificently restored battlefields. One of my favorite. It is my favorite. Um, the whole area from South Mountain to Antietam is my favorite of the battlefields. But I highly recommend traveling to those battlefields to get a really good sense, if you're doing historic research about your ancestors' service, to find out where they were and what they experienced during those battles. I love Glory. Now, two of my favorite films in a row, The Karate Kid and Glory, and two Denzel in a row with Glory and Philadelphia. We're in 1993. Philadelphia stars Tom Hanks in one of the first mainstream studio movies to confront the HIV/AIDS crisis. In the film, law partner Andrew Beckett, played by Tom Hanks, is fired from his firm when they discover that he is gay and has AIDS. He hires personal attorney Joe Miller, played by Denzel Washington, to help him with litigation against his former employer. Director Jonathan Demme is quoted as saying, "The film is not necessarily just about AIDS, but rather everyone in this country is entitled to justice." This film has been released on 4K ultra high def Blu-ray in 2018 on the 25th anniversary of the film. Now, this is a film, I have to say, I had never heard of before I looked at the list. It is Before Sunrise by Richard Linklater. Now, I had heard of his other um, time-based film called Boyhood. I had not heard of the Sunrise trilogy before. But it must be pretty significant because Before Sunrise has now been honored by inclusion in the National Film Registry. Richard Linklater has explored a wide range of narrative storytelling styles while consistently capturing ordinary, everyday American life. However, his innovative use of time as a defining and recurring cinematic tool has become one of the most significant accomplishments. As the first film in his Before trilogy, 3 films, each shot 9 years apart, Before Sunrise unfolds as one of cinema's most sustained explorations of love and the passage of time, highlighting the human experience through chance encounters and conversation. With his critically acclaimed 12-year production of the film Boyhood in 2014 and a new 20-year planned production underway, his unique use of the medium of film to demonstrate time passing demonstrates an unprecedented investment in actors and narrative storytelling. I'll have to check it out. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of romance, but the fact that it's included in the National Film Registry and I'd never heard of it before, um, tells me I need to probably pay a little more attention to film. This film is available on several streaming platforms. Now, this is Clueless. I'm not sure I agree with this one, but let's check it out anyway. A satire, comedy, and loose Jane Austen literary adaptation. I don't know about that. Dressed in teen movie designer clothing, Clueless, directed by Amy Heckerling, rewards both the casual and hyper-analytical viewer. It's impossible to miss its peak 1990s colorful, high-energy soundtrack, focused on-screen dynamism, and repeated viewings reveal its unpretentiously presented and extraordinarily layered and biting social commentary about class, privilege, and power structures. That was all one sentence. It's kind of representative of how I feel watching Clueless. Goes on and on and on. The film centers on Cher, played by Alicia Silverstone, as a well intentioned, fashion obsessed high school student who is convinced she has life figured out. In the age of MTV, the film's popularity launched Paul Rudd's career and Silverstone's iconic 1990s status. The soundtrack, curated by Karen Rockman, helped solidify the film as a time capsule of clothing, music, dialogue, and teenage life. Okay, maybe that's it. It it is a time capsule of, I think, aspirational teenage life, because I don't think real teenagers who lived in the real world during this time dressed like that or acted like that. They may have aspired to act like that because of films like this. So it's a kind of self-perpetuating cycle here. As you can tell, I'm sorry, I'm commentating on the film. Um, I understand why it's here. I personally don't like the film, but I do understand that it does have cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance. And so, good job, National Film Registry. This film is available all the time on streaming platforms. The Truman Show, um, highly prophetic, right? I think this is a film we'll look back on and say, wow, how did they predict what reality television would turn into just 10, 15 years later? Pretty amazing. The Truman Show, 1998. Before social media and reality television, there was The Truman Show. Jim Carrey breaks from his usual comedic roles to star in this dramatic film about a man who, unbeknownst to him, is living his life on a soundstage filmed for a popular reality show. Adopted at birth by the television studio, Truman Burbank, played by Jim Carrey, grew up in the fictitious town of Sea Haven Island with his family and friends playing roles, paid actors. Cameras are all over the soundstage and follow his activities 24/7. Almost 30 years since its release, the film continues to be a study in sociology, philosophy, and psychology, and has inspired university classes on media influence, the human condition, and reality television. Well, I certainly agree with that. It was quite groundbreaking. Now, this write-up says Jim Carrey breaks from his usual comedic roles. This was still slightly comedic. Um, it was Jim Carrey being subtly Jim Carrey in this film. And this one also is available on many streaming platforms. Frida, 2002. Now we're in the 2000s. Salma Hayek produced and starred in this biopic of Frida Kahlo, adapted from the book Frida, a biography of Frida Kahlo. by Hayden Herrera. The film explores Kahlo's rise as an artist in Mexico City and the impact disability and chronic pain from an accident as a young adult had on her life and work. The film centers around her tumultuous and passionate relationships, most significantly with her husband, painter Diego Rivera, played by Alfred Molina. This one too is available on several streaming platforms. The Hours. Now, I have to rewatch this film and think about how I feel about this film. But we're talking about history and we're talking about primary sources here. And while this is not a primary source about the life of Virginia Woolf, it can make or hopefully inspire individuals to look more into her life and into her writings. So when I first heard that there was a film called The Hours about Virginia Woolf that included Virginia Woolf, I had read her diaries, but I hadn't read Mrs. Dalloway yet. In her diaries, she refers to the book that eventually becomes Mrs. Dalloway as The Hours. Hence, when the film came out, I thought the film was her book, The Hours. And then when I found out it was based on a book by someone else called The Hours about Virginia Woolf, I said, well, how is that possible? Because her book was The Hours. And only later did I put together that she had renamed The Hours Mrs. Dalloway. They are the same book, and she never used the title The Hours outside of her diaries and letters. So a little bit of a digression there, but check out Virginia Woolf and all of her amazing writings. The Hours, 2002. Director Stephen Daldry's The Hours weaves the novel Mrs. Dalloway into 3 women's stories of loneliness, depression, and suicide. Virginia Woolf, played by Nicole Kidman, is working on the novel while struggling with what is now known as bipolar disorder. Laura, played by Julianne Moore, is unfulfilled in her life as a 1950s housewife and mother. Clarissa, played by Meryl Streep, is, like Mrs. Dalloway, planning a party, but for her close friend who is dying of AIDS. The film is based on Michael Cunningham's Pulitzer Prize winning novel. I highly recommend reading Mrs. Dalloway and reading anything you can get your hands on by Virginia Woolf. And The Hours, again, while not historically accurate, hopefully will inspire some viewers to learn more about Virginia Woolf. Now, Virginia Woolf lived in London, was impacted by the war directly, having been, I think, at one time evacuated from her home in London out to the country, um, and was a writer's writer. Quite amazing, and a great story. So hopefully this film helps to inspire viewers to learn more about her. The Incredibles, 2004. Now again, we're talking about history here, Sandy. We're talking about primary sources. What on earth does The Incredibles have to do with a primary source? But again, if our descendants 10, 50, or 100 years from now want to know what little kids were watching in 2004, they were watching The Incredibles. They were. And they were watching a film that had continued to show the evolution of animation through the 1990s into the early 2000s. With an all-star cast and memorable soundtrack, this Academy Award-winning Pixar hit uses thrilling action sequences to tell the story of a family trying to live normal lives while hiding their superpowers. For the first time, Pixar hired an outside director, Brad Bird, who drew inspiration from spy films and comic books from the 1960s. The animation team developed a new design element to capture realistic human anatomy, hair, skin, and clothing, which Pixar struggled with in early films like Toy Story. 100%, they knocked it out of the park. This film, for me, is kind of the transformation from flat or flat-ish animation into the more interesting 3D type animation, but it doesn't go overboard. Some films go overboard. Some films are meant to look more 3D, like the claymation-esque animation of like a Wallace and Gromit. But I think The Incredibles hit every note perfectly. From a history perspective, this is an important moment in film history. And also, again, something that we can look back on and say, I know what our kids were watching in 2004, and they were watching The Incredibles, and I was watching The Incredibles with them because I love it. And it's a story about a family. That's what it is. It's a story about, a family that has a lot of complicated stuff going on, but hey, they can all come together and help each other and help their neighbors and help their friends and save the world as a family. And I absolutely love it. The Wrecking Crew. We're back to documentaries again. So this is a film that not only can comment and provide insight into what we were watching and what we were entertained by in 2008 when it was released, but it gives us a really great story, important to the history of music in the United States. The Wrecking Crew is a documentary that showcases a group of Los Angeles studio musicians who played on many hit songs and albums of the 1960s and the early 1970s, including California Dreamin', The Beat Goes On, You've Lost That Loving Feeling, and These Boots Are Made for Walkin'. Through interviews, music, footage, and his own narration, director Denny Tedesco reveals how the Wrecking Crew members, including his father, guitarist Tommy Tedesco, were the unsung heroes of some of America's most famous songs. Production for the film began in 1996, and the film was completed in 2008. Due to the high cost of song licenses, the official release was delayed until 2015, when a successful Kickstarter campaign raised over $300,000 to pay for the music rights. This is irony at its best. So, a film about the history of the unsung heroes of music who contributed to that music was delayed 7 years in release because of the need to pay $300,000 to secure the rights to that music that they helped to create. That is history in itself. It's history reporting on history here. So a really important film and a really good documentary. The film also does include the music. That's why uh, the cost for the rights to that music. But a really, really good film. Going back to the 1960s, if you have ancestors, if you're researching your parents or your grandparents' experiences in the 1960s in the United States, they heard this music. And this music is part of their story when you tell the full story. And you can learn more by checking out The Wrecking Crew. Inception. Inception 2010. Writer and director Christopher Nolan once again challenges audiences with multiple interconnected narrative layers while delivering thrilling action sequences and stunning visual effects. Inception asks the question, can you alter a person's thoughts by manipulating their dreams? Taking almost 10 years to write, the film was praised for its aesthetic significance and Nolan's ability to create scenes using cameras, rather than computer-generated imagery. A metaphysical heist film with an emotional core driven by grief and guilt, Inception offers a meditation on how dreams influence identity. And it resonates deeply in an age of digital simulation, blurred realities, and uncertainty. Wow, it sounds like Christopher Nolan wrote that himself. I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. I think his film Dunkirk is one of the most interesting war films ever made. If you don't get it or you don't like it, you have to watch Dunkirk at least 3 times. I saw it 4 times in IMAX, and I'm glad I did. But Inception, this is one of those films that, like, spawned so many copycats and memes and references to the film. That's another reason why we can use film as an inspiration and a source for our research, right? The film's impact on culture. And that's one of the reasons, one of the important reasons that are looked at to determine whether a film deserves to be honored in the National Film Registry. So Inception definitely had an impact on our culture and on filmmaking. Back to documentary again, and a really, really good story, The Loving Story. Nancy Biersky's acclaimed documentary gives an in-depth and deeply personal look at the true story of Richard Loving, a white man, and Mildred Loving, a Black and Native American woman, who were forbidden by law to marry in the state of Virginia in the 1960s. Their Supreme Court case, Loving versus Virginia, was one of the most significant in history and paved the way for future multiracial couples to marry. The movie captures the immense challenges the Lovings faced to keep their family and marriage together through a combination of 16 millimeter footage, personal photographs, accounts from their lawyers and family members, and audio from the Supreme Court oral arguments. And what I've added there at the bottom of this slide is the citation to the Supreme Court case Loving v. Virginia, 388 U.S. 1, 1967. Read the case. This is a documentary that includes so much primary information in those photographs and in that footage and in the words spoken during the Supreme Court case. This is an absolutely fantastic resource for anyone studying civil rights history in the United States, particularly in the state of Virginia. But the outcome of this court case impacted the entire nation. This is truly a great source of information. Last one. We've looked at 24 films honored by the National Film Registry. And I see that my little talkie box there is covering. I did put a caption under this photo. This photo doesn't come from the film. It is a photo by Gray Villette via HBO. The film viewed on HBO, and that's a photo of the back of Mr. Loving and the front of Mrs. Loving. So I do want to give credit to Gray Villette. Our last film inducted in the class of 2026, which was actually voted on in 2025, is a film that Film Club reviewed, The Grand Budapest Hotel. What a visually stunning, I know that's cliche, a visually stunning film by Wes Anderson. I know. That's obvious. The Grand Budapest Hotel, 2014. 2014. So I'm not, and I'll have to do this before I make my edited video to find out if there's a waiting period. So this is only when it was voted on, it was only 11 years old because this film was voted on in 2025. So maybe there's a 10-year waiting period. I'm not sure. We'll have to look into that, and I'll put that in the edited video. The Grand Budapest Hotel. The Grand Budapest Hotel stands as one of Wes Anderson's most successful films and demonstrates his own brand of unique craftsmanship, resulting in a visually striking and emotionally resonant story. As one of the most stylistically distinctive American filmmakers of the last half century, in this film, Anderson uses historically accurate color and architecture to almost paint scenes to elicit nostalgia and longing from audiences, while at the same time weaving in political and social upheaval into the film. Couldn't agree more. This is the definition of every frame of painting, right? EFAP, every frame a painting. This film was inspired by the writings of Stefan Zweig, and I highly recommend reading his short stories and his novels because he lived in Eastern Europe during these times of upheaval, political and social upheaval. And his writings really evoke the scenery that is brought to life by Wes Anderson in this film. Visually stunning. Again, it's a cliche, but it's not. Um, so what does this film do for us? Well, is it historically accurate? No, but um, it evokes a feeling, right? It, it's a it's a fictitious land and a fictitious hotel. Um, but if you read the works of Stefan Zweig, who's writing, um, what he observed um, in some of his writings, primary sources, um, I think for me, the film inspired me to find the works of Stefan Zweig and to understand what he experienced during and before the war. So, as an inspiration to find more history, the Grand Budapest Hotel, but also as a work of pure entertainment. And again, if our descendants 10, 50, or 100 years from now want to know what I was watching in 2014, I was watching the Grand Budapest Hotel. And if they find my podcast with Stasis Geek and Jay from Nerd Takes, and they find me, they'll get my full review of the Grand Budapest Hotel, and they'll be able to tell that as part of my story if they care to tell my story 100 years from now. So let's look back again. Why are we talking about the National Film Registry? Why is this an important source for historical or family history research? Well, obviously, the documentaries are documentaries and they can lead you to more sources. And even if they themselves are not primary sources, they're using film, photographs, and firsthand accounts that certainly you can do more research on. The films themselves, back in the day, we can learn what our ancestors were watching and what films influenced them, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they did for fun, what they did when they had free time. The films that do portray history, like Glory, although not historically, um, not documentaries, um, they are based in history and can certainly lead us and inspire us to more history. But what other resources can we find? So at the Library of Congress website, in the section for the National Film Registry, you can also find film research resources for more information, not just about these 25 films, but about all of the films that are included in the National Film Registry. You can also find information here, as you can see on the left-hand side, about copyright issues related to film. So that's a really good place to check. Any researcher should try to stay as current as they can on copyright law. it gets complicated, even though the actual, the copyright terms of time, spans of duration, you can find those out pretty easily. But all of the types of media now, now we have to look at derivative media that is a YouTube video that takes an original source, and then someone makes a clip of the YouTube video, and then they play that, and then they put their own music over it, and they throw AI into it. It gets super complicated. In addition to copyright, rules around privacy are really complicated. And when we're researching, the closer we get to our own present day, we have to be really concerned about privacy. And I will be making a video on that topic as well. You can also find from this website where you can go to view the films. Obviously, not all the films on the National Film Registry can be shown because those that are under copyright generally aren't released. However, there are a handful that were released to the Library of Congress and with the filmmaker's permission are accessible on this website. So you will find some films post 1930 on this list. So for right now, 1930 is the cutoff for copyright protection. So in general, again, there are exceptions. Films released after 1930 are still protected by copyright. This year on Public Domain Day, January 1st, 2026, we celebrated 95 years since the release of films in 1930. So films made in 1930 and prior were released into the public domain. However, there are some exceptions, and if you check out this website, you may find some films that were released after 1930 that you can access directly from this website. There are also lists and lists and lists of other resources to check out film and to find ways to include film in your historic and family research. Now, I have a question. I'm going to see if I can get rid of my little icon down there. I hope you all can still hear me. What do you think will be included in the next batch of films preserved by the National Film Registry? So go to the website, see all the films that are already there. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of films already on the National Film Registry. But what's not on the National Film Registry yet, and what would you like to see in 2027? Please share your predictions in the comments. I would love to see what you think should be on the list. Also, and I'll go into this in my edited video, voting for the 2026/2027 class is underway. How do films get on the National Film Registry? Well, people vote for them and nominate them. Anyone can nominate a film for inclusion in the National Film Registry. The instructions are on the website. And I'm already writing a nomination for a film that I think should be included in the National Film Registry. And I'll share that more about that in a future video. Well, that was a big list. And oh my gosh, we've been streaming for goodness gracious knows how long, an hour and a half at this point, I think. I just want to thank everyone for joining, for viewing. Please leave your comments below this video. Let us know what you'd like to see in future. Primary Sources channel is here to talk about information and inspiration for your historic and your family history research. We'll talk about best practices. We'll talk about tips and tricks to help your research. I hope you have brilliant success in all that you research. Take care.